Greetings, everyone, and welcome to episode 88 of Teaching Tales, the podcast totally devoted to sharing stories from the world of education. Once again, I am your host, Brent Coley, an elementary principal in beautiful Southern California. Joining me today, another colleague from my district, the one and the only, my bro, Sean McCarthy. Sean, how are you, man?
Great. Thanks for having me, bro.
Yeah, and the bro, I will explain to the listeners that we're doing this in Zoom right now, so we're seeing each other's face. For those of you who don't know Sean McCarthy and don't know, and if you've seen me, we are both follically challenged on the top of the head. We both have gray goatees on our chins. And Sean, when he comes to my site, because I'm going to let him explain kind of what he does, but when he comes to our site, there have been multiple occasions where the students on site will be like, "Hey, Mr. Coley," to Sean, thinking that he's so. And yeah. Sean, didn't you say this? People like that, is that your brother?
Yeah. I usually go with it, and I say, "Yeah, I'm his big brother or little brother." I go one way or another.
Yeah,
especially when I see the disappointed look on the kids' faces when they realize I'm not really you.
I'm not Mr. Coley. So now whenever Sean comes over, it's just like, "Hey, bro," and when we text back and forth, it's always bro. Yeah. Say hi to mom and dad. Yeah. Say hi to mom and dad for me. So, right. So Sean, for anyone who people in the district know who Sean is, but for anyone outside of the district who may not know who you are, give us a little background. Who is Sean McCarthy?
Well, right now I am the staff development and induction coordinator for the district. So I basically facilitate our professional development programs and our induction program for our new teachers. So we run our own credentialing for everybody who needs to get a clear credential, and that's basically a requirement for everybody who comes in. And I've been with our district for a little over 25 years, since 1994, starting out as a high school English teacher at Mirror Valley High School. And before that, I taught in Pasadena and LA Unified. So been in education for a lot of years now. So my passion is just in the world of supporting teachers, mentoring, and anything that has to do with advancing learning for new educators, veterans, and I also just have an affinity for technology as well. So do dabble quite a bit with that. So that's something you and I have in common. We're the geeks, the tech geeks.
Yeah, the Mirror Valley's Geek Squad.
Yep.
Well,
exactly.
And I'm so happy to talk with you today. I mean, you and I have had so many conversations on this side, but what you do, and I'm hoping that people who are listening to this episode are getting something out of this, because I'm so thankful that our district has you as a person, but also you as the position, and is valuing the need to support teachers and staff, whether it's, I mean, you do amazing thinking map trainings and technology trainings, but what we want to talk about today is more of that SEL side, right, that mindfulness side. And we've talked about that in previous episodes about and it's so often discussed about from the student's perspective, which is immensely important. Mm-hmm. But when I said, "Hey, what do you want to talk about?" You said mindfulness. Right. And more from the staff perspective. So yes. Let me pass the mic to you, and why is this your passion? Why is this what you want to talk about? Tell us your story.
Well, it just became something that became really important in my life, and something that I just decided I wanted to share, particularly with our young teachers coming in, mm-hmm. just because it had such a huge impact on me. And, it was something that I stumbled across, I don't know, probably 6 or 7 years ago. And unfortunately, I came across it the hard way, and probably a little bit too late. And it's one of the reasons, I guess that's probably the reason I'm so passionate about it. And, a lot of times when I share it with our new teachers who I started, first sharing mindfulness practices with, I always tell them my story, my journey into mindfulness and how I got there. And, I tell them that almost anybody who knew me, being at, Murrieta Valley High School over the years, anybody who kind of interacted with me as a teacher, as a colleague, as, even parents who interacted with me, probably nobody would have thought that I was somebody who was, dealing with a ton of stress, or, they probably thought Sean was this easygoing guy. Sean was this person who took everything in stride. In fact, I was probably the person in my English department. I was the English department chair for a lot of years. I was probably always the go-to person if there were conflicts. Hey, go talk to Sean. He'll kind of take care of things.
Sure.
And I was probably the person who could de-escalate things, get things calmed down. I never had a lot of issues in my classroom, discipline problems. I was really good at, if there were problems, I could kind of get things cooled off really easily. Parent issues, never had those, because I could usually, if somebody was upset with something, I had a way almost always
Sure.
to kind of turn things in the right direction. But what nobody ever knew is when there were conflicts, whether it was with people in my department, or if it was with that student who was really having a challenging time, maybe at home, or was going through personal problems. What people didn't know about me is those were the kind of things that I was kind of holding on to inside, and that were often keeping me up at night. And, I'd be, waking up in the middle of the night worrying about that student who was having those problems, or worrying about those two, staff members who weren't getting along, and wondering, okay, is that going to become a problem again tomorrow? And even though I could diffuse the problem there, and I could laugh it off or tell that joke to, get things, de-escalate it right then, those things I wasn't actually dealing with, and I wasn't taking care of things, and I wasn't really confronting things in a healthy way. And that was happening year after year. And what kept happening also, and I wasn't really aware and making the connection, is I was having these constant back issues. Every time I had, in fact, my students used to joke about it, because I would always have these neck issues in my upper back, and I'd have to go to the chiropractor all the time and get them worked out. And I remember sometimes they would get so severe that I couldn't even straighten my head. And in fact, I had one year where I couldn't get my head up right, and I went to school. I even had students at the end of the year make a video where they kind of one of my students portrayed me. He wore a shirt that looked like the shirt I wore, and he came in the classroom, couldn't lift his head up, and he portrayed Mr. McCarthy giving a lecture. And it's because I used to make jokes about even that. They'd say, "Mr. McCarthy, what's wrong with your neck?" And I said, "Oh, don't worry about it. All that matters is that I took care of those poor kids that were, on the school bus. They're all safe. Don't, that's the important, I even laugh.
De-escalating and yeah.
But what was happening is I was holding this stress in my neck and not, dealing with it year after year after year. And I'd go to the chiropractor, he'd adjust my neck, get it fixed. I'd go back and do it all over again. I'd play the same reel, over and over again. And I just keep holding on to that, over and over and over again. And, take care of it, move on, and, wake up, have trouble sleeping, and deal with this. But just think, well, that's just life, right? I'm, teacher. Teaching's a stressful job.
Sure.
We just got to deal with it.
There's nothing I can do about it, but
right.
There is.
What can you do? That's just reality.
Yeah.
So I finally one day had this come to head, probably 5 years ago or so, where I wake up in the middle of the night and I have such an excruciating pain running down my back, my chest, my arm, that I actually thought I was having a heart attack. So did my wife. And it turned out, thank goodness, it wasn't something quite that serious, but it turned out that golf ball pain that had been occurring over and over again was finally coming to a head. And my spine just ruptured, just up and down my neck. So in fact, C3 through 7 in my cervical spine, they just finally all decided, you know what, we're done with it.
We're done.
Haven't been taking care of us. We're gone. We're out of this. And so, tried to do the same thing, tried to go to the chiropractor, finally had to go to the doctor. They, got the ultrasound, and it was just a complete mangled mess. And in fact, everybody kept, asking me, what kind of injury did you have? Did you have an accident or anything else like that? And it was like, nope. Years and years of stress. I couldn't fake it. I couldn't pretend. No, it was,
Sure.
me heroically doing something. There was no hiding the fact that, this was just,
it was stress.
Years and years of
unhandled stress.
Yeah. And so, I eventually had to have surgery. Had to have my entire neck fused and get that taken care of. But the dire warning, I was given was, this is the Band-Aid, you've got to do something, because this time it's your neck. Stress is going to continue to be attacking you physically, and not to mention what it's doing to you emotionally.
Yeah.
And we all know that, right? We all know what stress can do to one, and the manifestations that it can have on a person's health. So that was kind of the beginning of my journey.
Wow.
And
I knew about your surgery that you had a few years ago, but I did not know the full backstory of that. And I just think, I think the route we're going to go now is kind of like, that's not the end of the story.
No.
You are learning to manage that better. So I think for people listening,
Right.
Like you said, the dire warning is, this is a Band-Aid. Like, you have to do something different,
right?
Or this may happen again.
Absolutely.
So,
and that's the trouble. It absolutely does. And the trouble is, what we do is, if we don't find something healthy, we try to, manage it. And unfortunately, I think too many people go and try to cover it with, whether it's medication, or even self-medicating, and I know that's one of the things I was doing for a long time. I was self-medicating, and unfortunately my self-medication was something I could find on the corner of every, street in America, and they would supersize it for me as soon as I drove up to the drive-through, because that was the easy, fix for me. And that's my, but unfortunately for other people, there's other things, right?
Exactly. So for some, for food for you, but it's something much harder for so many people. And
exactly.
As you were talking about your back, in the chiropractor, when I moved into the principal seat, I think it was my second year. I've never had back issues till my second year.
Yeah.
And the types of things where it was going out on me, where I couldn't stand up and it would completely lock up. I remember being at a staff meeting once and turning and gesturing to the screen and like completely, and the whole room is going oh no, he and going to the chiropractor. And I remember saying, could this have anything to do with stress?
Yeah. And
he just kind of looked at me like, there are no stupid questions except that one there. Brent, there's a lot of people. And he even said, a lot of your district leadership come here. It's so I've experienced that. If you're not handling that stress in the appropriate ways, it will manifest itself physically. And I like how you said, but also emotionally.
Mm-hmm.
It's that there's that social aspect to it. So that's what you dealt with. So how have you, as you're now working with teachers and how they can help manage your stress, how have you been able to do better with that?
Well,
because the stress isn't going to go, because you still have a stressful job. I still have a stressful job.
Absolutely.
We're not going to be able to avoid it. It's how are you managing that?
Well, the big thing, I started looking at some of the things that I could, explore, and mindfulness had always been one of those tools that had intrigued me, and that I had done some research on and I believed in. And the trouble was I kind of tried to do it just on my own, reading books or, just kind of trying to go sit and meditate based on just a very cursory understanding of what it was about. And I just could not do it. And in fact, when I would try to, practice things like mindfulness of the breath, which is the most traditional type of meditation that a lot of people do, not only did I not find it effective, I found it so much more stressful because I couldn't do it, because you're supposed to, be aware of your breath. When I found I wasn't able to stay focused on my breath for even 5 or 10 minutes, I would, I'd be actually more stressed out because I said, boy, what's wrong with you? You can't even concentrate on your breath for 5 minutes, so I would find myself even more frustrated. And so what I finally did is I got some actual training and coaching on mindfulness. I did what's called a mindfulness-based stress reduction program, an 8-week program that's actually done. It's done in hospitals all throughout the country. It's done for, they do it for service members, police officers, first responders. It's actually very research based. And it just was structured. And it actually, the biggest thing is it actually taught me what mindfulness really was all about and gave me the technique and the training and the strategies to recognize and really, first off, really understand the research, the science behind it, but also the techniques, and also to recognize those struggles I was having with, keeping my attention on my breath. That's actually the practice. That's actually what's supposed to happen, that your mind wandering all over the place.
Yeah.
That's actually, what your mind does. And when you wanders away, that's actually catching it and bringing it back is actually part of the practice. And it was so eye-opening and so transformative, and that I probably did have such a powerful experience that's when I realized, wow, if I could have had this experience and all the benefits that came with it in terms of greater awareness, greater emotional regulation, the stress reduction that I started to really recognize was happening for me. And then the next thing was, wow, if I had had this 30 years ago when my career was starting out. And that's when I started realizing as someone who's working with these young teachers, I need to start sharing with them and hopefully catching them early and giving them those same opportunities to just recognize that, it's something that is really important that they need to have in their repertoire of professional practice. And the beauty of it is we actually have a teaching standard that connects to it. As we do induction, we actually have standard 6, which is developing as a professional educator. In our world of induction, one of our standards is actually managing professional responsibilities. And that's to keep yourself motivated and committed to your students. So we actually talk about how do you do that? What are some things that keep you motivated? How do you stay committed to students? How do you keep resilient? And so we've kind of put our mindfulness, work under that umbrella.
And I love how you tied that back to like the standards. I mean, and as I do teacher evaluations and stuff like that, that's standard 6 and balancing personal and professional responsibilities. And I'm so glad that these kinds of conversations are being had more in not just our field, but in all fields, but specifically, in our field, because I think the myth is that self-care is selfish.
Right.
It's my job is to take care of everybody, and which our job is to support our students, and your job is to support teachers. My job is to support teachers and their students and our families and stuff like that. But you can't fill from an empty vessel.
Exactly.
And kind of like what you went for years and years and years and years with not managing that, and the result was excruciating pain, spinal surgery, and I mean, and just and your doctor said, and next time it might be worse. So I mean, don't want to sound like doom and gloom, but at the same, the message that I would want anyone to hear this is, who is listening to this episode, to take away from this, is it's not just okay to learn these strategies to manage the stress and stuff like that. It's essential. I mean, I'm thinking we're recording this middle of January, so this is our first week back from winter break. So we just got, our district, we had 3 weeks of winter break. So our teachers were off for 3 weeks. And Sean, and I don't know about you, but I looked forward to this winter break probably more than any other winter break leading up to this point. Sure. Simply because we're in the middle of a global pandemic, and the stress level that we've all been under, and I don't want to say like everybody has been under a level of stress that has just been exponential when you compare it to what we've had to deal with before, because it's totally unknown. So I was ready for break.
Absolutely.
And I think one of the things that I try to communicate to our staff, to our teachers, was take a break. Yes. Like turn off the notifications on your phone. If you need to, take the email app off of your phone. Yeah. For at least 3 weeks. Like, that's okay, because what I've learned, and I wrote a blog post like on the end of 2020 about that, just like we cannot let those notifications control us, because speaking personally, and again, I think I talked about this in a previous episode, there's a lot of power that little red number on the email app on your phone or your iPad or your computer. There's a lot of power in that. Yep. And I have learned that not many good things come from checking email at 10 o'clock at night. No, absolutely not. Because you can't solve those problems at 10 o'clock at night. The angry parent email that comes through at 10 o'clock at night, you're not solving that. Right. And it's almost giving teachers permission to do that. Like, what, you mean I don't have to check my email 24/7? No, not only do you not have to, you shouldn't, because it's not healthy. Absolutely. And when I started as an administrator, I remember tweeting out or putting on Facebook, like jokingly saying, like, has anyone found the off button for the brain yet? Right. Like joking, like, haha. And somebody wrote back and said, like, there isn't one. Yeah, no. But there is like a mute button. There may not be an off button, but there is a mute button. And we need to not be afraid to hit mute on that. And again, I talked about this in one of our previous episodes with Dr. Sam Fesich when we were talking specifically for new teacher advice. You got to set those boundaries. Right. And again, you and I, we love tech. Remind, Class Dojo, Seesaw, Google Classroom Reminder. I mean, all these messaging apps that we have access to now. Teachers, if you're listening to this, you have to be very careful, and you have to set those boundaries. Absolutely. It is okay to not answer a message at 10 o'clock at night. Yeah. I used the example before, that's feeding a stray cat. Yep. For sure. You answer a message at 10 o'clock at night, you've just said, hey, I answer 24/7. And that's not fair to your family. It's not fair to your spouse, to your kids. And I speak from experience. I have been so guilty of that, of not being present for my family. And I still have a ways to go in that, but at least I'm recognizing this has got to get better. Yeah. This has got to get better, because it will control you if you let it. Right. I'm going to step off of my soapbox there for a second. And so when you talk with new teachers, or veteran teachers for that matter, like what kind of tips or strategies are you providing them?
Well, what we do is we actually have, in fact, everything you just talked about. We have an entire managing professional responsibility menu of options, and it includes mindfulness. It includes task management. It includes email management. It includes just a whole. We even go into things like financial management. All those things that keep them up at night, that kind of keep them ruminating, perseverating. And we actually provide them with all those different strategies for all the things that we know that they're going to be potentially overdoing, overthinking. And because mindfulness alone isn't enough, but mindfulness is the starting point. Because if they're not aware, if they don't start with and you hit the nail on the head, because you have to be aware of it first, because otherwise you get overwhelmed and you just start going down those rabbit holes. And that's where the mindfulness really does kind of come in, because if your mind is just this jumble of things and you're all over the place and you're not even recognizing you've got this problem, that's where I was. I didn't even kind of recognize what the issues were. And you're not kind of, recognizing I'm on tech all the time. You go to a restaurant right now. Well,
I know where you're going. Now. Well, we can't go right now, but I knew where you were going.
You look at any table. What's everybody doing? They're all on their phones.
On their phones. No one's talking
anymore. But I don't think most people are even aware of it, right? Yeah. And that was one of the things that was part of my issue. It wasn't necessarily on my phone, but it was that multitasking that was going on in my life that was just, constant. I kind of tell when I work with new teachers, I say, are you in that state of mind where you're watching your favorite TV show and 15 minutes in, you have no idea what's going on? Are you in that state of mind where you drive home and you don't even remember getting there?
You don't know how you got there.
Mind is not with you. You're not present. That's where the mindfulness comes in. And that's the world we're all living in, because we've got so much going on. We're just not present right now. And getting the awareness first can kind of help us get the control we need to then get things to become more manageable. And then we give them those other tools they need, whether it's the task management, the email management, some of those things, to get things back in control, because we do find so many people who are kind of in that little bit of a tailspin.
Yeah. Like you said, I dig you have to be aware. It's almost like the first step in solving a problem or fixing is recognizing that there is a problem, because then if you recognize, hey, I need to do something here, then you can look and you can find what's going to work for you. I mean, like you mentioned breathing, and for some people it's going to be walk. And you mentioned before we started recording, it's going to be taking a walk and getting out. I mean, for me, back in the spring when we were shut down and we were in the lockdown order, because for people listening in California, I mean, well, most people had that too, but at the beginning it was a lockdown where it's like you were at home and you were allowed to walk around the neighborhood by yourself, but that was it. That was pretty much all we were allowed to do. And working from home, I realized I have to do that. I'm on Zooms all day. I have got to get out of this house and get some fresh air and some sunlight. But I was aware of that. So whether it's the breathing, whether it's the walking, whether it's prayer. I mean, as you were talking about them, I mean, one of my favorite verses in the Bible is be still and know that I am God. Yeah. Be still and know that I am God. And it's the be still part. And that's hard, but it kind of, if I can just, and as you said, that's the practice and trying to pull your mind back when it goes. But being aware is where it all starts.
Right. Yeah.
It's where it all starts. Yeah. So,
well, and that's the other thing we do, because I think even with mindfulness, I think there is that misconception of what mindfulness is, that it is just that traditional breathing meditation, and that's not for everybody. And there's so many other things you can do that have the same way of getting you into, so we share all sorts of different options, whether it's mindful walking, whether it's mindful movement, whether, there's lots of different ways to do it. And that's not the only way. We do talk about that. Find your thing. Find your thing that's going to get you to that state. If it's not mindfulness, do something that's going to be that thing that will be your release, and that's going to get you out of that habit, that habit loop that that is doing whatever it is, whether it's constantly being on email all day, whether it's constantly checking your phone all day, that is not keeping you healthy and aware and connected, and doing what is just better for you.
Yeah, whether it's, again, is it reading? Is it, I mean, and I've heard people say, like, oh, maybe it's binging a show on Netflix.
Yeah.
And I've heard because honestly, sometimes that's what we need.
Yeah.
I'm going to say it. We just need to have a brainless show or something where we're not thinking about work. Right. We're just gonna watch a show. Now, some people, I could never do that. Then that's not your thing. Just in the same way that some people couldn't sit and read a book for 5 straight hours. Some people could. Maybe that's their thing. Some people want to garden. Some people want to walk. Some people want to run. I'm not going to, to each their own.
Right,
so,
exactly.
Just the word mindfulness. Truly being mindful, being aware that we have to manage it, that we have to balance it, and find your thing. So for anybody listening, that's the homework, is find your thing. Yeah. And don't feel guilty for doing your thing, because again, it shouldn't be a guilt thing. Right. It should, because as you talked, it was a matter of your personal health. You're not handling the stress that you were under led to spinal surgery.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's a big deal.
Right.
And mine led to some back problems, which I've been better at it, and my back has been better. And like you mentioned, like the medicating and stuff like that. In your case, you mentioned it's food and stuff like that. And I was doing a lot of the same thing. I was eating way more than I should. Right. So, Wow. Well, Sean, it's good stuff, man. Good. I am, again, on a friend level, I appreciate your friendship and just being able to chat informally, but also for hopefully what people are listening to this episode and are getting something out of it. But also I think of the teachers on my site that have benefited from what you have provided them, and all the teachers that will in the future benefit from what you're going to get them. Thank you for what you're doing, and for just being transparent and vulnerable and sharing your story today. I really appreciate it.
Oh, it was my pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, you got it. And if they wanted to connect with you, are you on social media? Do you have any way that they can connect with you?
I am on social media, but you know what? I probably will never be able to remember my Twitter handle. Probably the easiest thing is just getting in touch with me through the school district. And I'll just put a plug in for Mindful Schools if they're interested in learning more about mindfulness, because that's the organization that I really learned a lot from. And if they want to get some formal training, Mindful Schools is the organization I've been certified through, and one of the reasons I'm able to do training for our teachers in our district. And then there's just a lot of great apps and things like that. But the 10% Happier app is currently being offered for free for any frontline workers right now, including educators. So if they're interested in using an app to learn mindfulness, right now it is available. It's usually, I think like $50 a year, but they're giving it free to all educators. You just have to use your district
email.
Any educator. So 10% happier, and they've got really good guided meditations and some
All right.
mindfulness instructors. So
awesome.
There's a few others that I think offer some free things for frontline workers too, but that just happens to be the one I'm using right now.
Awesome. Well, yeah, again, I think the most important thing is seek out what your thing is that is going to find some balance and to take a break. It's okay to take a break. Again, because if we don't, I think I'll close with this, and I don't know who said it, I can't remember, but I've heard it multiple times. It's like when we're gone, we will be replaced, or something like I'm replaceable. If I don't take care of myself and something like they will replace me, no matter how well I'm doing my job or how well you're doing your job. I mean, we are replaceable. So we have to take care of ourselves so that we don't have to be replaced. So awesome. Sean, thank you, my friend, bro. Appreciate it.
Thanks, bro.
Say hi. Say hi to mom and dad for me, and to my real mom and dad. Hi, mom and dad. Thanks for listening. And for everybody else, thank you for listening. If you haven't already done so, as I say at the end of each episode, subscribe. Again, you can find the podcast in any of your favorite podcatchers, whether that's Apple Podcast, Google Podcast. We're on Spotify now, Google, Stitcher, or you can listen directly on the podcast page at brentcoley.com, or you can listen on Anchor. And plug for my book if you want an encouraging read. One of the things we talk about in that is just kind of the importance of relationships and the importance of taking care of yourself. Stories of Edu Influence is my book. You can get that on Amazon. It's in paperback Kindle. And if you like podcasts and you like listening, it's also available in Audible. So if you're interested, you can check that out. Sean, thank you again, my friend. Hopefully we will see you in person sometime soon when we can get back to semi-normal. And for everyone else, thanks for listening. And until next time, have a good one.